Okay, thanks, Bill, and good afternoon. I think we might running out of time, but I promise you I can do it as quick as I can. Make sure we will have lunch on time. Okay. All right. This presentation. Thanks for having me, Lance and etc. So these studies, we only have one study for today is the effect of carbon regulations initiative on the corporate's ESG performance in real estate sectors. And this is going to be an international evidence. So we have heard a lot of interesting presentation this morning about green buildings, why we're doing green buildings. I think Paul mentioned about, or Paul left, about working with developers, etc. So for these studies, what we're interested would be why property investors, they're really doing the ESG, or why they engage in the green building. Is it because of carbon regulations? Back then to think about we need to do such things, or they sincerely want to do it. Okay. So quickly for my presentations, we will do several things. First, give some introductions, why we want to do these studies, the motivation of these studies, and then the objective of these studies, the methods we're going to use, and where the data we use, and some results, and lastly, the conclusions. So for these studies, we think there's based on literature, we try to be we reckon this was the first studies to investigate how listed real estate firms, okay, or listed companies, property firms, ESG activities are be affected by institutional frameworks. In this case, be more specific, we want to study whether ETS, emission trading schemes, or carbon tax will have an impact to make property investor or property developer more likely to engage in the ESG space. Okay. And what's more important, we want to find out what's the channel that do, if there's a relationship between carbon initiative and the ESG performance of the firms, and what are the channels they're doing to achieve it. So let's start with ESG as a properties. Whether you like it or not, if you go to the conferences, you talk with the property industry people, all the investors, all the property investors, they're all talking about ESG. Okay, some probably doesn't believe in climate change, but they are also start to talk about ESG. Okay, so an interesting study done by CBI, one of the leading property consultants companies. They did all the survey with all the executives in the Asia Pacific, and more than 83% of the executive, most of the CEO, etc., they reckon green building is the futures. And what more important, more than half of them reckons they need to rebalance their property portfolio. What does this mean? It means that they're going to buy more green buildings, or they're going to sell the buildings they own at the moment, which are not green enough. Okay, to make them feel like we are good in this space. Okay, so quickly look at the literature review. In this space, ESG in the property literatures, this is somewhat under research. Okay, no one really look at this. There are a lot of studies focusing on governance, how governance can, particularly for risks, can reduce the overconfidence of the CEO of the company, etc. A lot of studies have been done about green buildings, whether green building will give you green premiums, okay, or whether you can sell with higher price or rent with higher price. Okay. However, very few studies looking at why a company adopt ESG. Okay. So there are some studies have been done in the mainstream literature reviews, not just in property, but the results are mixed. Okay. So several studies shows that maybe the institutional framework make a difference. Okay. Some study in the US that probably found there's no impact. But if they go to Europe, they say, oh, there's a positive impact. Maybe the institutional factors does matter. So a lot of studies have been done it. And what's more important, a lot of studies also arguing, in this study, they look at all the companies, all listed companies. It can be manufacturing company, it can be biotechnology companies, can be property company, etc. This kind of industry are quite diverse. Okay, we need to control them, then probably we're more likely to get more consistent pictures. So that's why we focus on real estate. Okay, so there are several reasons why making real estate should be the focus. One is a homogeneous sectors, and they are big enough. Give you a good example. If you look at the US markets, they generate 3.2 million jobs in the US. Okay, and they pay around 230 billion salary to people who engage in these sectors. If you look at June 12, 2023, there were around 2,400 listed property company globally. Okay, and some of them are really, really big. I think it was from Hong Kong. You sure understand how big of this property company in Hong Kong. Okay, so in total, all these companies generate $3 trillion to the whole economics. And what is more important, back to the carbon perspective, they contribute around 36% of the energy usage and 37% of the carbon emissions. And what's more important, the governments also realize these sectors has a lot of opportunity to contribute to the climate change. Okay, so they have ETS, they have carbon tax, but they also have something more specific to property sectors. Okay, so like green building certification, we heard about neighbors, we heard about green buildings, Green Star, etc. But even in reportings, you ask the property company to report what kind of activities you do. Okay, so this raises a question: how effective so these activities will have an impact on the ESG participations by property firms? So this would be our research questions: how real estate ESG performance and carbon regulation are related. Are they going to be related? Maybe yes, maybe no. No study have been done. So that's why our objective here is try to fill this research gap. We want to study how carbon tax or ETS will encourage property firms to more likely to engage in the ESG. So some hypotheses we put down here. One of the hypotheses we put down is North institutional hypothesis. Basically, I suggest that all the company will try to behave like what the society expects them to do. Okay, if the society expects them to be green, they would try to do it. They don't want to be seen as an outlier. So that's why we came up with the first hypothesis. If a country with this carbon pricing initiative, like ETS, they're more likely to have a ESG score, higher ESG score, particularly in environmental score in the real estate sectors. However, if you look at the mainstream carbon literatures, there are a lot of carbon literatures trying to argue the differences between ETS and carbon tax, just apply on tax, not really encouraging the company to think how they can reduce their carbon emissions. Just think like income tax or company tax, just pay the tax. However, ETS is another way around. They try to provide mechanisms for the company to rethink, okay, how can I reduce my carbon emissions? If I don't need so many carbon emissions, I might sell it to someone else. They can make profit of it. So there's a differences between ETS and carbon tax, although both are carbon emissions regulations. So a lot of studies also arguing maybe carbon tax not as good as ETS. So that's why we come up with the next hypothesis: carbon tax maybe has no impact. So next thing we're going to do is we're going to test. We use a global data set by acknowledging not every single country has ETS or carbon tax, which allows us to do a lot of analysis from here. So we use the MSCI data set, and MSCI try to rank the companies into 3 categories: environmental, social, and governance. What's more important, if you look at this diagram here, next to it, under environmental, they even break it down, how this company perform in terms of climate change, natural resources, pollutions and waste, and the last one is environmental opportunities. And you can see the further subcategory, good example, environmental opportunities that link to the green buildings, etc. Okay, green technology, etc. So let's look at the data we use. We try to use global data. We try to include all the property companies in the world that we have. And what you can see from here, no doubt, US dominates the whole analysis. They are the big, well, many more property company in the US than any other country. They contribute about 34% of the sample size. And we also try to control whether the country has a civil law or common law. That law literature arguing about this. What's more important, we look at the carbon pricing initiative, whether they got ETS or carbon tax. or not. Okay, and when they started to have it, a good example like in Australia, we got it in 2012, and then we get it of it in 2015 once with the new governments. Okay, so this is the methodologies, or we use difference in differences. Okay, and this is some result here. The interest drivers here will be the DID ETS. Okay, as well you can see from here, the DID ETS here. We try to run different model, whether the models with no control variables, with the model with some countries, we try to control with the countries. And as I mentioned earlier, US contribute one third of the samples. So we exclude US as well as a control variables. And we also try to control countries and firms. Regardless what we do, we get a consistent pictures, which is if a company is located in a country with ETS, they're more likely to do well for their environmental peers. However, if you look at the DID carbon tax, there's no similar evidence. So again, this supports our hypothesis earlier. ETS, by having ETS, will make company more likely to engage with environmental initiatives. We also do for the social peers. Unfortunately, you can see from here, regardless ETS or carbon tax, is not significant. So it has no impact on the property firm's perspective in order to engage in the social elements. We do it for the governance, governance period as well. Again, no significant impact. So ETS and carbon tax have no impact to the company engagement in this space. We did the overall. Again, overall the impact is not that strong, which is understandable because you try to aggregate environmental, social, and governance together. So what's the key take out from there? So the key take out, one is different institutional frameworks, particularly ETS, does have an impact. If your company is located in a country with ETS, you're more likely to engage in the environmental initiatives. Okay. However, no similar evidence for carbon tax that contribute to the discussions, debate in the literature whether we should ETS or have a carbon tax. So quickly have a closer look. Okay, we know ETS has an impact and to encourage property company to engage more in the environmental space. Okay, so how did they do it? Okay, so that's what we have a closer look. What are the channels? So remember the graph I showed you earlier? So one of the beauty of NSCI that break it down to different subcategory. So which allow us the opportunity to regress to all these different teams. So we focus with the environmentals. There are four teams there: the climate change, natural resources, waste management, and lastly, environmental opportunities. So if you currently can see from here, if you look at the DID ETS, it's positive and statistically significant. So mean for environmental opportunities means that by having the ETS, we really will make all these property companies to do something to think about the environmental opportunities. They might not worry about climate change too much or natural resources, probably doesn't really relate to them, except as waste management, but they will really focus on the environmental opportunities. So again, this is consistent with the previous study showing that by having ETS, it could incentivize all the property companies to do better in this space, environmental space. And we have a closer look at the green buildings, how green buildings will help them. So one of them you clearly can see from here, generally this positive significant. Again, the result shows green building, a lot of property firms by having ETS will make them to more likely to absorb or occupy green buildings or build more green buildings as well. We do a lot of partner checks from the statistically or econometrics modeling perspective, and generally we found very consistent pictures regardless what we do, including we try to control whether the company is located in civil law countries or common law countries. That doesn't change the results. Okay, and so as a conclusions, Okay, what we can conclude here is different institutional framework does have an impact, but that only applies to ETS, okay, not for carbon tax. So this contribute to the discussion or the debate whether we should have a stricter rules about carbon. Should we have more about carbon tax versus ETS than carbon tax? So lastly, just want to acknowledge the fundings for Property Research Trust for this project. And thank you very much. Happy to answer any questions. Thank you.